Good morning, Little Masters, and welcome to today's Tolkien Times, a Prancing Pony podcast production. I'm the Man of the West. Thank you for joining me as I head back into the rich poetry found in Tolkien's epic poem, The Lay of Lúthien. Now, when we last left the epic, Beren and Lúthien had been enjoying a chat with Carcharoth on the front porch of Angband when they realized Lúthien couldn't change her perfume, so she just put him to sleep instead. Now, today we begin Canto 14 as Beren and Lúthien, still in their wolf and bat cosplay, make their way to the very pits of hell. I'm going to read from Canto 14, lines 1 to 122. Into the vast and echoing gloom, more dread than many tunneled tomb in labyrinthine pyramid, where everlasting death is hid, down awful corridors that wind, down to a menace dark enshrined, down to the mountain's roots profound, devoured, tormented, bored, and ground by seething vermin, spawned of stone, down to the depths they went alone. The arch behind of twilight shade they saw recede and dwindling fade, the thunderous forge's rumor grew. A burning wind there roaring blew foul vapors up from gaping holes. Huge shapes there stood like carven trolls, enormous, hewn of blasted rock, to forms that mortal likeness mock, monstrous and menacing, entombed. At every turn they silent loomed in fitful glares that leaped and died. There hammers clanged and tongues there cried with sound like smitten stone. There wailed, faint from far under, called and failed amid the iron clink of chain, voices of captives put to pain. Loud rose a din of laughter hoarse, self-loathing, yet without remorse. Loud came a singing harsh and fierce, like swords of terror souls to pierce. Red was the glare through open doors of firelight mirrored on brazen floors, and up the arches towering clomb to glooms unguessed, to vaulted dome swathed in wavering smokes and steams, stabbed with flickering lightning gleams. To Morgoth's hall, where dreadful feast he held and drank the blood of beast and lives of men, they stumbling came. Their eyes were dazed with smoke and flame. The pillars, reared like monstrous shores to bear earth's overwhelming floors, were devil-carven, shaped with skill such as unholy dreams doth fill. They towered like trees into the air, whose trunks are rooted in despair, whose shade is death, whose fruit is bane, whose boughs like serpents writhe in pain. Beneath them, ranged with spear and sword, stood Morgoth's sable-armored horde. That fire on blade and boss of shield was red as blood on stricken field. Beneath a monstrous column loomed the throne of Morgoth, and the doomed and dying gasped upon the floor, his hideous footstool, rape of war. About him sat his awful thanes, the Balrog lords with fiery manes, red-handed, mouthed with fangs of steel. Devouring wolves were crouched at heel. And o'er the host of hell there shone, with a cold radiance, clear and wan, the Silmarils, the gems of fate, imprisoned in the crown of hate. Lo, through the grinning portals dread, sudden a shadow swooped and fled, and Beren gasped. He lay alone, with crawling belly on the stone. A form bat-winged, silent, flew where the huge pillared branches grew, amid the smokes and mounting steams. And as on the margin of dark dreams a dim-felt shadow unseen grows, to cloud of vast unease, and woes foreboded, nameless, roll like doom upon the soul, so in that gloom the voices fell, and laughter died, slow to silence many-eyed. A nameless doubt, a shapeless fear, had entered in their caverns drear, and grew, and towered above them cowed, hearing in heart the trumpets loud of gods forgotten. Morgoth spoke, and thunderous the silence broke. "Shadow, descend, and do not think to cheat mine eyes, in vain to shrink from thy lord's gaze, or seek to hide. My will by none may be defied. Hope nor escape doth here await those that unbidden pass my gate. Descend, ere anger blast thy wing, thou foolish, frail, bat-shapen thing, and yet not bat within. Come down. Slow wheeling o'er his iron crown, reluctantly, shivering and small, Beren there saw the shadow fall and droop before the hideous throne, a weak and trembling thing alone. And as thereon great Morgoth bent his darkling gaze, he shuddering went, belly to earth, the cold sweat dank upon his fell, and crawling shrank beneath the darkness of that seat, beneath the shadow of those feet. Tinuviel spake, a shrill, thin sound, piercing those silences profound. A lawful errand here me brought. From Sauron's mansions have I sought. From Taurenufuin's shade I fare, to stand before thy mighty chair. Thy name, thou shrieking waif, thy name! Tidings enough from Sauron came, but short while since. What would he now? Why send such messenger as thou? Thuringwethel I am, who cast the shadow o'er the face aghast of the sallow moon in the doomed land of shivering Beleriand. Liar art thou, who shalt not weave deceit before mine eyes. Now leave thy form and raiment false, and stand revealed, delivered unto my hand. I want to start by looking at that first stanza of this canto. For what I believe is the very first time in the 14 cantos I've read so far, we have the same word starting 3 consecutive lines in a stanza. Down. Down awful corridors that wind, down to a menace dark enshrined, down to the mountain's roots profound. And even just 2 lines later, down to the depths they went alone. I don't believe this heavy symbolism is anything but intentional. It's not as though Tolkien didn't have synonyms for down. He simply wanted the reader to sense and feel the depths that Beren and Lúthien are descending towards, and the vast weight above them as a result. The description of this place really does feel hellish. The burning wind, foul vapors, gaping holes, blasted rock, fitful glares, hammers clanging, tongues crying, wailing captives. And it's even worse when they reach Morgoth's throne room itself, a feast consisting of the blood of animals and the lives of men, pillars that are devil-carven, filling unholy dreams, like trees that have their roots in despair, and the shade of those trees is death itself. But they make it in their disguised forms, and it's interesting to me that Morgoth's attention is exclusively on Lúthien in her raiment as Thuringwethel. It's as though he doesn't even notice Beren in his really awesome Draugluin costume. Now, is this because he senses the true power emanating from this bat-like form in front of him? Does he already know and lust after her, as we'll see next week? And to what extent is this simply because he, as he almost always does, overlooks and underestimates man? And folks, that's it for today's First Stage Friday. But come back next week as, in a darkly ironic moment, we read one of the most disturbing passages in all of Tolkien on Valentine's Day. I swear I did not plan it that way, because this sure isn't the passage that I would read to honor the idea of romantic love. I mean, whoo, Morgoth, not exactly pure of heart. Now, eventually, I will return to Fandom Fridays, so if you know anyone who should join me here for a future Fandom Friday, please email barliman@theprancingponypodcast.com. And please visit patreon.com/TolkienTimes to learn how you can support the show, get an ad-free feed, a monthly hangout with me, a bonus weekly episode, and a lot more. And then join me again tomorrow on today's Tolkien Times as we wrap up this week with Silmarillion Saturday. Now, podcast listeners, not a thing is changing for you, but I still hope you'll check out the YouTube channel, if nothing else, to check out PPP Plays. Now, last week, those of you watching might have noticed that the handle for this channel was changed to @PrancingPonyPod. That's because we're now combining all of the PPP content into one YouTube channel, including the Prancing Pony Podcast and Rings of Power wrap-up back catalogs, along with my new streaming show, PPP Plays, which launched earlier this week, running Tuesdays and Fridays at 6 p.m. Now, days and times will change, though, so be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Since I am producing 4 different shows, it's also time to consolidate social media. Be sure you are following @PrancingPonyPod on Twitter, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, and really anywhere else. The other handles, @RingsWrapUp and @Tolkien Times, are no longer going to be active. And finally, as Faramir says, go with the goodwill of all good men.